Big news for anyone who loves the history of D-Day. Matt McLachlan Battlefield Tours has just launched a brand new tour that visits the D-Day beaches and lots of other sites in rural France, and all from the comfort of a luxurious cruise on the Seine River. Now, we ran this tour in 2024 and it was a huge success. It sold out in a matter of weeks. So now we've rolled it out again for 2025. But this time, there'll be 3 departures in June, July and September, giving you 3 times the opportunity to join us. The cruise is on board the luxurious Amadeus Diamond and begins and ends in Paris. Over 8 days, you'll enjoy the history, scenery and culture of the beautiful Seine River. But as an exclusive offering just for our passengers, you'll enjoy 2 full days touring the D-Day landing beaches in both the US and British sectors, plus daily seminars on board the ship that unpack the history of D-Day. And like all our tours, you'll be hosted by one of our expert historians who'll bring the story of D-Day to life. And if you've been on one of our tours before, you'll know that our historians really are the best there is. This is an exclusive cruise and places are extremely limited. Visit battlefields.com.au to book your place today.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
When it comes to weight loss, no 2 people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
A Living History production.
I'm Matt McLachlan.
And I'm Pete Smith.
We're battlefield historians who love nothing better than getting out and walking the ground where great battles in history took place.
And now we'd like you to come with us. Every week, BattleWalks will take you to one of the great battlefields of Europe.
As we walk the ground, we'll dig through the pages of history. We'll uncover the secrets of the battlefields, and most importantly, we'll tell the stories of the people who fought and died there.
Welcome to BattleWalks.
Hello and welcome to BattleWalks. Thank you for joining us once again as we stroll the battlefields of Europe. It's been a really exciting journey. In a couple of months we've been doing it so far, so thank you for coming along on that journey, and thank you for the feedback you've given us. We're getting a lot of Twitter comments, we're getting a lot of messages through Facebook. It's just great to hear from people. So you can find me as Matt McLachlan on Twitter and also Living History on Facebook. So jump on there, track us down and say hi. If you've got suggestions, a couple of the episodes we've done have been based on suggestions from people who've listened to previous episodes and wanted to hear more. So if you have suggestions for where we should go, send those in as well. I should introduce, of course, the person you're all here to see, all here to hear from. We've had lots of great feedback about this guy. He is I have to say, Pete, you are a budding star of the podcast world. So a great discovery. Pete Smith, welcome back.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I like that. Yep, keep going.
Yeah, I always enjoy kicking these off, mate, with making you feel a little bit embarrassed. It sets the tone well for the rest of the episode. How is everything in France going, mate? I mean, you're in the middle of a cold winter, in the middle of a COVID lockdown. How is everything going?
Well, it's quiet, which is a good thing. It means we can wander the battlefields that we can reach without anybody being there at all. But that's about the only thing I can say. Other than that, it's a bit like Groundhog Day over and over again.
Well, hopefully the virtual walks we get for the battlefields are not enough to replace actually getting out there and walking the ground. But hopefully for you, Pete, and for also everyone listening, hopefully it's a good way to pass the time and a good way to get us inspired when we can get back over there again. And I think today is one that will inspire a lot of people because we are heading back. We're still in France, but we're doing World War II again. And this time, D-Day. I mean, the iconic battle, the one that everyone thinks of when they think of France. Tell us a little bit about quite a specific action we're following today on D-Day, Pete.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a very specific action just to do with 4-7 Commando. That's a Royal Marine Commando, so obviously something that I'm interested in, being an ex-Royal Marine. And we're going to be talking about what they did on the 6th and the 7th and just the dawn of the 8th on that very, very famous day when we started the retaking of Europe. So it's an enormous undertaking. I'm not even going to attempt to try and do it in this podcast because we'll be covering little other areas as the podcast goes along. But the 6th of June, 1944, that famous day when in the dawn, the ships came over the horizon. For those that know nothing about it, I would highly recommend watching the film The Longest Day. It's an old film now, black and white, because they're going to use a lot of original footage as well. But it's just a really good overview of the story of what happened on that famous 6th of June in 1944, the start of the retaking of Europe.
I think it's a good point, Pete, that, there's a little bit of assumed knowledge here. We're not going to sit here and recount the entire story of D-Day. I think people either know it well enough or can find out pretty easily. But let's talk about the beaches, because that's important. Let's talk about the 5 landing beaches. So obviously Brits and Americans and Canadians and French and a whole mix of allied support in ships and planes. Let's just talk about the 5 beaches, and then that will lead us neatly into the area we're talking about today.
Well, I think we'll just talk about the landscape before we describe the individual areas, because it alters to such an extent. We've got bluffs, which are kind of sand dunes that rise slowly in some areas. We have pebbly beaches in other areas. We have walls, because they're behind sea walls, so we have towns behind sea walls, and we have high cliffs. So it's a whole range of different types of beaches that we have to attempt to land on. What we've done, we'd split them down into areas, and those areas, we're looking out to sea, and this is always a difficulty. So we're looking out to sea, so we're actually looking north from the south, and on our right-hand side, we first of all have Sword Beach, then Juno Beach, then Gold Beach, then Omaha, and Utah at the end. So whose beaches are they? Well, just very broadly speaking, Sword is a British beach, Juno is a Canadian beach, Gold is a British beach, Omaha is American, and Utah is American as well. But there's massive overlapping, and we have things like the Free French Forces, we have Norwegians, we have, as Matt just said, we have almost all of occupied Europe is going to supply units that will be involved in the landing.
So, Pete, it was a very broad front. There were a lot of troops involved, but we're looking at a very small sector of the front today. Just tell us which area of the landing beaches we're concentrating on.
So we're going to be on Gold Beach, but the area that the 4-7 Commando is going to attempt to take is actually sits on a little dip in the cliffs in between Gold Beach and Omaha Beach. Now, for anybody that's done any history on the landings on the 6th of June, then they'll know that the Omaha Beach landings, American landings, didn't go too well. So we are going to sit close to that landing, in between that and the British landing on Gold Beach. So it's right in the middle. But to get there, because these are high cliffs that link those two beaches, we're going to be landing on Gold on the flatter areas and then working our way behind the German units. In fact, they were tasked not to engage the units, to try and get right behind the town and head to a little place. It's called Port-en-Bessin, and that's where we're going to be concentrating on the taking of this little port called Port-en-Bessin.
I was just looking at some photos of this town, Pete, and I haven't actually been to Port-en-Bessin, but it's quite famous in that sector, and it's remarkable, the geography. I was just looking at photos of it, aerial photos. It's incredible. Tell us a little bit about this amazing geography, the little harbour, the cliffs. It's really quite remarkable.
Well, it's right in this section, which are chalk cliffs, very high chalk cliffs, and there's a harbour. So the cliffs dip at this area, and there's a harbour there. So you've got a deep water harbour, and then you've got an inlet, so you can just go inland and ideal for fishing. And that's exactly what it was. It's a little fishing port, and each side of it, you've got these high cliffs. So it's just this little gap in the cliffs where where a little town grew up there. But of course, that's why it's ideal, because it's a deep water port. We can get a few vessels in there, it was important to the Germans to defend it, so it's very, very well defended by the Germans. So it was important that we took this port, and we have a reason for taking it. And this is something I was going to bring up later, but I think I'll do it now. It's because we are looking for a port that we can capture, that we can bring a pipeline into. So what's that about? Well, obviously, if you're invading a country and you've got nothing with you, you have to bring everything. Well, one of the things they needed to bring was petrol, was fuel for the vehicles. And they needed the port not to be able to bring in lots and lots of tankers and vessels carrying petrol, but to bring in a pipeline, because they are going to literally pump petrol from Britain to France under the water through a pipeline. And this is where the first pipeline, there's another one that they're going to actually bring into Le Havre, a bigger port further up the coast, but that won't be till considerably later when it's taken. This is the one that's going to be needed right on the early phases of the battle as we attempt to force the Germans out of Normandy and then onwards into the rest of France. So a crucial location for many reasons.
Pete, it's the one thing I love whenever I read anything about D-Day is, the word that springs to mind is audacity. This was not just, let's land on the beaches and hopefully give the Germans a bloody nose and see what we can do. I think a big part of this story was our experience in the First World War and the desperation to not repeat that stalemate of trenches and getting bogged down in France. But it's just the extent to which they planned and their intentions and the way they pulled it off. It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it is actually mind-boggling when you start reading into all the various things that they have to think through, and they literally have to think of every problem that could possibly happen and then come up with an answer to it. So just to give you an idea of the planning that was needed to do this, I'll use something that Matt and I are very keen on and have been lots of times, and that's the Gallipoli landings. Gallipoli landings, the planning of that, effectively 3 weeks. This was 3 years. The landing in Normandy, 3 years. And even then, it's difficult. They're trying to just cover every known eventuality. And as we'll see as we tell this story, it can go wrong so quickly. And then you rely on men on the ground to sort it out and progress. So it's just unbelievable.
Speaking of men on the ground, Pete, tell us about 47 Commando. Who are these people? What even is a commando unit? Tell us about the Marines, who these men were and what they were tasked with on D-Day.
We start off, it's Churchill again, as it normally is. Churchill is always involved in some of these plannings, and he was very keen that having been thrown out of Europe, having been thrown out of Norway, things not going particularly well, that we needed to still have a presence, that we still needed to show that we were capable of offensive actions. So he basically is the guy that's going to start this off, that we needed units who could land in occupied France, Belgium, wherever in Europe, and cause problems to the Germans. So these became known as commando units. It's army commandos originally, the men from the army, but eventually it made sense that the Royal Marines, we are the guys that help on board the ships. So we are the infantry on board ships. We can be used to come off the Royal Naval ships and form a battalion on the land to help defend ports or the ships on the land side. We also man some of the turrets on board the ships. So we are used to working on ships and working on the ground. So it seems sensible to convert the Royal Marine units into commando units. Of course, you can't just transfer them, you have to ask for volunteers, so that's what they did. And we end up with basically 4 commando units, 4-1, 4-6, 4-7 and 4-8 Royal Marine commandos. And they become the units that are going to be used for the landings on D-Day. And they form basically a brigade, and this is a brigade that's going to be used for those landings, the 4th Special Service Brigade. And 4-7, they will all be given individual tasks, and normally you have to say commandos and parachutists, the parachute regiment, are protecting the flanks, as were the American parachutists operating for their sectors. Parachutists, commandos, special forces, the Rangers for the Americans, they are the people that are protecting the flanks, and this is part of that. This is the flank of the British effort adjoining or abutting the American effort at Omaha, and that's what 4-7 is doing as well. It's going to be the linchpin, the linking of the British efforts on the beach to the American efforts on their beach, Omaha Beach.
And I'm assuming the men in this unit were fairly young and fit. It sounds like a fairly demanding role to carry out in the Marines.
Yeah, average age between 18 and 22. Of course, they're always bolstered by older guys who probably have a lot more knowledge. But 18 to 22, unbelievably committed, fit. I mean, their regime to become a commando was fairly strenuous. It included training down in St Ives in Cornwall, up in Scotland, all over the UK, but mainly on the coast, because this is what they're basically being trained to do, and that is to land in occupied Europe. They had no idea where they were going to be used initially, because this is their initial. This is 4-7 Commandos Blooding is their landing on the beaches of Normandy. Very keen, very fit, fairly young, but know their job in and out. I suppose that the esprit de corps is the term that I would use. They are very, very, very keen to get into action and to succeed, and to show that all this training that they've done, 18 months of training, can be used for something sensible.
So you mentioned that the plan was not to take the village of Port-en-Bessin head on, but to land on Gold Beach and swing around behind us. So tell us about the landing, because that's going to be obviously an essential part. Coming ashore is going to be the key part of the whole operation.
So what we're going to do is we are going to start this tour, this walk on the coast, looking out to the sea, and imagine what we're looking at. And we're at a place called Ansnells. And very close to another area. These are quite hard to find on the map, I have to say, trying to track down the exact spots on these, because these are small, little, tiny places. La Hamel is another place, and that was their original objective, was to land at La Hamel. So what time are they coming in? Well, they're aiming to hit the beach at round about 9:30. The initial landings were at 7:25. So you have to say, if they're a commando unit, why are they not coming in with the first waves? Well, the whole point is that these do not want to be engaged during the fighting to take the beachhead, because they're going to pass through. They want in fact, it's the 1st Hampshires to punch a hole through the beachhead. They will then let them through, and they will then go behind the German lines and work their way to the right. So they're coming in and on the beach, and they're going to turn right and work their way along the ridges and the valleys and the roads. And it's a mix to get to Port-en-Bessin, hopefully without getting any contact with the Germans, so there'll be no fighting, so they can get there intact. But it's all going to go fairly gruesomely wrong right the way from almost the start. So I have to describe what they're landing in. They're landing in a landing craft Assault. It carries 30 plus men, 35 men, depends how much kit they're carrying, but let's say 30 plus, so just 35 men, a crew of 4, and they're being dropped off 8 miles of sea from motherships. And there's 14 of them, 14 landing craft, full of everything that you need. So these guys have thought it through. They've got Bangalore torpedoes, they've got all the radios they need, they've got all of their kit for basically 24, 48 hours on the ground, looking after themselves without needing to get anything, ammunition, machine guns, mortars, they're all with them. A Bangalore torpedo, by the way, is used for blowing up barbed wire or strong defences. So they're coming in with those, split among the 14 landing craft. One of the landing craft is hit immediately by a direct shell, which takes it out completely, killing most of the men on board. And as they get closer, they begin to realise that things have not gone well with the 1st Hampshires landing on the beach, and they've been forced to the left. And so effectively, where they were going to land has still not been captured, which means that they're going to be facing an enemy there immediately when they land on the beach, and that is not their job. So they have to do a left-hand turn, and in doing so, they're basically showing their flanks to all of the Germans on the beach. And it means that the landing craft, rather than just the front of the landing craft, you can now hit the sides of the landing craft. So all of the landing craft get hit in one way or another. The second problem they have, the landing on the Normandy beaches had been planned for it to be low tide. And that meant that all of the German obstacles that they'd placed along the beaches would be visible, and you could then go around them, land in front of them. And yes, you had a long tidal beach, so you had to cross this beach to get to any kind of defence or protection, but it meant that you got in safely. Well, because these are coming in so much later, the tide has changed. The tide is now coming in, and a lot of these beach defences have been covered up. And also the engineers, because of the German strength of defence, have not been able to destroy them. So they're still there. And some of these are as simple as a wooden pole with a mine on the end, known as a telemine, and then the boat runs into the mine. Or we have something called Belgian gates, and they are even simpler. They are a big metal structure embedded in concrete, and basically it's got something that on the top of it that rips into the bottom of the landing craft and holds them and causes them to either sink or to roll over, in fact, by they ride up on them. And that's what starts to happen. A lot of the landing craft run into the mines. It's so bad that only 2 of the landing craft are able to get back to the motherships. And so lots of men lost all of their kit. Even if they survived, which the majority do, they have lost everything. And there's talk about some of the commandos arriving with no trousers or nothing, because in trying to swim ashore, because they were a long way out, they've had to take off everything to get any hope of getting in. So they've got no equipment to start off with. One of those that's missing is the commanding officer. He's not there as well. And so we have a problem right the way from the start. And it's going to take over 2 hours on the beach, basically scrounging equipment, trying to find a working radio, getting their stuff together before they can head inland. But that's exactly what they're going to do. So it was a hellish start. And so if we stand on the beach and look out, you have to imagine what they faced as well, because as they came in, hours after the original landing, there were dead men in the water, there were knocked out tanks, there were some captured Germans milling around the beach, there were the beach masters on the beach trying to organise people where they could go. And in amongst all of this, we have German shells landing because we've not yet taken all of the German positions. Now, these are known as WN positions. That's what they're called on all the maps. Effectively, what it means is a defensive nest, really. It's a defensive position. So I'll be talking about WNs and the assault of WNs as we go on. But it's basically it's a defended position. Sometimes it can include an artillery piece, and sometimes it's just infantry positions. So they basically have to get through this little town, out into the open on the roads behind, and at the same time trying to gather equipment. Thankfully, because they are so keen and so fit, that all of this can be done quite quickly. The other thing I should say is they were terribly seasick on the way in. This is not a calm weather. This was not a brilliant day for landing. As some of you may know and some may not, but this has been put off. Because the weather was so bad, it was put off a day, the landings. So the weather's still not brilliant, but this is a very small window when they know they can get the landings going. So again, not brilliant weather, and it will cause other problems in other areas, which we'll cover in other podcasts, where tanks cannot make it ashore and they sink because they're designed to actually float. And they don't, but we'll talk about those on another podcast. So very, very bad weather, terrible seasickness. So you can imagine, as well as having the Germans shooting at you, having the potential of having to swim part of the way in, you're also very, very seasick as well.
And I don't actually think this is part of the story, Pete, but the famous Long-sur-Mer German battery is in this area as well, isn't it? Which is really an essential site on the battlefield.
Yeah, because we can't really walk from this location to where the commandos are heading, we would drive there or cycle there if you'd hired a push bike. But there's two locations which are absolute must-see. If you're going to come to the Normandy beaches, then Longueuil-sur-Mer, the German battery. But before that, you have Arromanches. And Arromanches is where all the museums are and where you get your lunch and your chips and anything else. So these are absolute must-see locations. Arromanches is the first place on our... So this is on the right, and this is where the commando is going on the right. They're going further inland. These are both on the coast. Longueuil-sur-Mer, a German battery, that is the one that is going to cause some of the damage, and may have been the one that hit the landing craft that was hit by a direct shell and sunk immediately. That battery will not be taken out by bombing. It was attempted to bomb it. They took out three of the guns. There are 4 guns there, and but one of them continued firing for most of the day, and in fact will not be taken until the following day. So well worth. All of those guns are still there in their casements, in their concrete shelters, and just again we could do a podcast on that. Just to say, for those that have seen or are going to look at the Longest Day, very, very famous bit where the German is in the mist looking out towards the sea, and as the mist parts, he then sees all of the ships coming toward him. I can't remember what he says now. It's something like "Gott in Himmel" or something, but along those lines of good grief. And he can see all of the landing boat, the landing craft, and everything coming towards him. So and that was filmed in this observation bunker, which is part of this battery complex. So well worth going to have a look at.
Well, It's such a fascinating area. There's so much to see in this area. That's my experience of being in Normandy. There's just so much to see. How do we keep on track here, Pete? Where are we going to head next? Because we could be distracted left, right, and centre as we tour this part of the coastline.
Well, I think part of what you need to do now is almost to take off your battlefield touring hat and just to enjoy the countryside, because we'll be driving and zigzagging and trying to follow the way that 4-7 Commando is heading. This is going to be a fair old 18-kilometre march, and remember that they're picking up kit. A lot of it German, I have to say. They're picking up their captured weaponry to replace what they've lost. They're trying to get a radio that works, and so all of this is being gathered up. They're picking up vehicles that are going to support them as well. But 18 kilometres quietly on effectively a summer's day, crossing the countryside. So what type of countryside is it? Well, we've got we're on the edge of the bocage, and the bocage is fields that have high walls and the hedges on the top of them. So it's stone-built walls around fields. It's little paved country roads, a little bit of cobblestone, but quite often these are actually tarmacked roads. Small, beautiful little villages, stone-built villages, orchards. This is famous, this area, for growing apples and pears. The only thing that really would spoil it, there are dead cows everywhere. And so many soldiers who fought through this area, remember the dead cows in the fields, because, of course, they've been killed accidentally. The fire obviously sweeping across the field, so we get dead cows. The other thing that's interesting is the intermingling of units here, German and British, because the Germans are not quite sure where we are. Remember, they're crossing the countryside here, so they're constantly bumping into German units who sometimes fight it out, sometimes stick their hands up straight away. And everybody kind of looks surprised, because there is this intermingling of nobody knows quite where anybody is. Have they got off the beaches? Have they got behind us? And of course, every time that they bump into German units, 4-7 Commander has to take them out, take them prisoner, kill them, and hope that nobody is passing back any kind of information as to where they're heading. And so it's all very successful, really. This part. The CO catches up, having managed to get ashore. He was late getting ashore. He wasn't killed. He manages to get ashore and catch up to them, and on they go. And where they're heading for a place known as Point 72, known as Mont Cavalier, near a place called Esqueux. And Esqueux you'll be able to find on the map if you're looking. And Point 72, as the name will apply, is a high point, and it is basically directly behind Port-en-Bessin, looking down into the village. And this is where they're going to harbour for the night. They're going to dig in. They didn't know whether they would have to take it. There was a thought that the Germans may have been already holding it because it was a sensible place. And when they got there, they discovered that the Germans had been digging in there, but there were no Germans there. Or so they thought. In fact, what they found is a German medical post with a doctor and 2 wounded Germans. And of course, they capture it and they carry on using it as their medical post as well. So that's very common. And that's when they harbour. They get about 2 hours sleep, or dozing, because they're interchanging. They're setting sentries up before they're going to head into the town itself. I often wonder what it would have been like. Would you have slept for 2 hours? I don't think I'd have been. I think I'd been cleaning my gun and sorting my equipment out. But I think it's amazing. These are young men who actually are used to a hard life. They've been training, as I say, for 18 months. And I think a lot of them would have got a couple of hours sleep before they went into action the following day.
That was my initial thought, Pete, when you were describing this to me, what it would be like there, dug in the ground, having just been through everything they've been through that day, wet and cold, noting the Germans. They're behind German lines, noting that the Germans could arrive at any moment. It must have been we talk about the longest day. That must have also been the longest night.
I think for most soldiers who have been trained in this, and perhaps not so much for commandos, but when you're used to everything being disciplined and in order and knowing where everything is, to suddenly find that everything is not where it's supposed to be, and you can't find him, and you can't find that person, and that person's disappeared, then I think it immediately causes problems. Basically, there were 300 of them. This commando unit is now down to 300 men starting on the beach. This is how when they got onto the beach. They had 28 killed and 20 one wounded, and 27 missing, probably drowned. So they're already lost quite a lot of men, so down to 300 men as they prepare to assault the town. And then you have to start thinking about, is every single one of these men going to be assaulting the town? And no, they're not. These guys are going to be holding this hill. This is going to be their fallback position. They're going to be obviously holding the route down into the town to make sure that is open, so if they need to withdraw, that they can. And then they're going to break down into troops. They're in troops. A Roman commando is broken down into troops. And those troops are going to be allocated with various aspects. The most important aspects are these two cliffs at each side. So these two cliffs at each side where the guns are that would stop ships from coming in and can fire down into the town as well. Those are the ones that need to be assaulted. And it's going to be basically what they're hoping is that they will get down through the town, and it won't be a dawn assault because they're going to be moving into the town, but they're hoping that by midday that they're ready, and they will be supported by fire from the sea. So there's lots of these allied ships. There's the French ships, there are Canadian ships, there are American ships, there are British ships. All that are capable of hitting targets. One of the big issues they have here is you have to identify a target, and you have to be able to tell that ship where it is and what you want to shoot. And they still have a problem with the radios, or a radio, and in fact haven't got a FOO, a forward observation officer. He may be naval, he may be artillery. In this case, he's going to be an artilleryman who can communicate with the ships with his radio and then identify the targets. Now, that's not going to happen until the afternoon, and so that's going to cause a problem as well.
Well, tell us about the main attack on Port-en-Bessin in the morning, Pete.
Right, so what we're going to do, because the best way to get the view of that attack is to actually walk right the way through the town ourselves. So we're going to walk through the town. There are several memorials to the commander within the town, one on the roundabout as you enter the town. And we're going to head down to the docks. We're going to walk along the docks. And there's a lock gates very close to the sea walls at the end of the town, where the town peters out, and then we get the beach and the sea walls and then the harbour area. And we're going to cross over the lock gates, and then we're going to turn around. So we've got our backs to the sea, and we're looking back in towards the town. And from that, you get a good view up both sides, the cliffs on the left and the right, and you can imagine the men slowly working their way through the towns. So on they come, down coming through, and one of the first things that they need to take is a defensive position that's actually at the front of the town, supporting the town. And that was really one that was facing outwards, so that is the only one that is actually facing them. The others are going to be facing out to sea, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of swinging their guns round to inland to fire at the commandos that are going to be working with through the town. So they work their way through the town. They take that position very quickly, and start working their way into the centre of the town, and then they decide which feature are they going to attack first, and it's the western feature. So if we're looking from them attacking, the western feature is the feature on the left-hand side. So that is going to be the first feature that's going to be assaulted, and they allocate a troop to assault that feature. So this is now into the afternoon. It's a zigzag trackway that leads up to these, and they're also getting help. I hasten to add, and I really want to stress this now, the local population here came out to assist in fairly good numbers. And we have a gendarme who's been guiding the commandos into position. So a gendarme, a policeman, a French policeman, so he'd be a local gendarme, and he has been pointing out German positions and guiding the men into place until he's wounded in the face. But he will be awarded the Croix de Guerre for his efforts on that day. There are also other Frenchmen, presumably part of the resistance, of just guys that felt it was necessary to come out and show that they could aid, who are pointing out positions. So the French are very much involved. Also, people ushering people into rooms. As some units some individual men got cut off in the town, surrounded by Germans, they were hidden in houses until the Germans passed and then out again. So the townspeople very much were aiding the commandos as they fought their way through the town. So a troop trying to get up this ridge, and then they hit the big problem. In the harbour, there are two flak vessels. A flak vessel is an anti-aircraft vessel. It has a series of armaments, but perhaps the most chilling for the commandos is a 4-barreled 20mm flak cannon, which is mounted on these boats. Now, these they didn't know were there, because they arrived literally on the day before the landings on the 5th of June. These things had arrived in the harbour, two of them, and they'd tucked into the sides of the harbour. Now, they could see the commandos climbing up the cliffs, and so they swung their anti-aircraft guns inland and hit the commandos in the side as they're trying to assault these positions on the western feature. So terrible casualties, 12 men immediately killed and 17 men wounded. So that's half of a troop. That's half the troop taken out in that fire. They withdraw back down and lick their wounds. There is no way they can get up there while these flak ships are there. So another troop is then allocated to try and take out the flak vessels, and also fire from ships at sea was coming into them. But because these vessels are very low, they're almost like barges, very, very low to the ground. They're tucked in behind the sea walls, and they're very, very difficult to hit. And in fact, talking about all of the different nationalities, one of the vessels opening fire on these is a Polish naval vessel called oh dear, I wish I hadn't said this now. Krakowiak. I think that's how you pronounce it. It probably isn't, but that's what it looks like.
Nicely done, mate. Good enough for us.
Yeah, thank you. and that vessel opens fire, but cannot take them out. And in fact, what they decide to do, these naval vessels, they launch little boats and send in their own effective commandos to take out the flak vessels, which are taken out successfully. In fact, when they get there, I suppose they realise the Germans have already abandoned them. But the damage has been done to the assault troops of 47 Commando A Troop. They have now been forced to withdraw. At the same time, they get the terrible news that their rear area, their harbour position at point 72 has also been overrun. The headquarters elements there try to fight off the Germans, but there's too many of them, and they overrun that. So we start to see, as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, how things can go wrong very quickly, and suddenly something that looked like it was going quite smoothly is now on the balance. And so this is where you need that grit. You need that grit and that esprit de corps that is going to turn this around.
Pete, what I love about this story, and it's what I love about studying history in general and the battlefields in general, is when we talk about these great attacks, these great battles, we talk about thousands and thousands of men in big groups of men, and we talk about, we refer to them as units and divisions and brigades. But for the blokes actually taking part, their war is everything going on immediately in front of them. I mean, it's often said that a soldier's war is 6 feet in front of him. And that story about the flak ships firing on the troop as they scrambled up the cliffs, I'm just imagining for men who had not seen any other action, for men who were perhaps wounded in that action, that was their whole war. And that moment when those flak ships opened up with considerably large cannons on them, just would have been a horrific moment. For the men involved in that action, that small little window, that could have been in their entire war, and just horrifying scenes.
I was going to bring this in at the end of the podcast, but it's well worth it. It needs to be brought in now. I've met quite a few of these guys. I try and, or have in the past, make the effort to get to Port-en-Bessin on the anniversary of the attack. And there's always a little group of old guys and their families normally with them nowadays, wearing their green berets and their blazers around the bars and on the quaysides there. And these are the veterans of 47 Commando. And I had the lovely experience of getting to chat to one of the chaps and getting to know him so well that he actually came to stay with me here in Fleur. And I just found his talking about the action just so amazing, really. You have to remember, these guys are new to this business, 18 months of training, that's when they get together. These guys are bonded into little tight-knit groups of men that would do anything to help each other. And he was in a landing craft that was hit by a shell, and it landed slap bang in the middle of the landing craft. And him and the coxswain were the only people that survived. And he swam into the beach and was re-kitted out and continued on. And he just said that to me in that way. And I thought, God, you have to think about it. And that means that he lost all of his mates before they even got to the beach. Every man he trained with and worked with and got to know and drank with and laughed with were gone in one split second before he even got to the beach. And yet he carried on, and he's in one of the assaulting groups taking these cliffs. I just found that absolutely amazing that he was able to carry on, and I think it shows the grit of and the way that these guys were trained as commandos to not exactly accept, but to continue on to do their tasks, even in having faced those terrible experiences.
Just extraordinary stuff, and it shows the value of speaking to veterans. Unfortunately, there's not that many left to speak to these days, but it just shows the value of that oral history and speaking to veterans. We shouldn't look at it. I mean, we've done a lot of podcasts with someone like Peter Hart, who has interviewed thousands of veterans over the years, but we shouldn't look at oral history as a way to learn more about the historic record. We look at oral history exactly for that story you've just described, Pete, where it fills in those gaps. It gives us an insight into what was going on for every individual man there. And it's just extraordinary stuff. I'm very jealous that you had that opportunity. How wonderful to speak to those veterans.
It's great, and sadly, I don't think there's no organised. They used to organise a trip there. I think you'll get the odd one or two who are determined to go no matter what, but there's no longer organised visits by them with the men themselves. I'm absolutely certain that the friends and families of 4-7 Commando will still go there on the anniversary dates, but no longer will we see the green berets of the original men that fought there. So I feel very honoured that I was able to meet them over the past 8 years when I normally regularly try to get to the anniversary. So onwards with what's going to happen next. So Captain Cousins, who'd actually he'd led the attack on the attack that failed on the western feature, is now going to rally men. He actually crosses over and he's going to lead the attack on the eastern feature. It gives you a little bit of an idea of how gung-ho he was and how keen he was that this should be a successful assault. The flagships have now been taken out, so this is the start of where it starts to turn around. He leads an assault of 25 men, literally firing from the hip. Again, they've been guided into these little zigzag tracks that took them up the cliffs, got very close to a concrete position, and then they charged it. Unfortunately, the Germans saw them coming through grenades, and one of the first to fall was Captain Cousins, and he was killed. But his men, who are nearly all wounded, continue on, the 25 men, and they take the blockhouse. And then they start moving up, and more men join them, and you can feel it changing. There are a lot of Germans here who were quite happy to fight to the end, but it's very difficult when people kind of start waving little white hankies and holding their hands up. And what do? Because if you carry on fighting, you're going to almost certainly get all of those guys that are surrendering killed. So slowly but surely, it's like one of those things that happens. One person surrenders, then another one, and more guys started to hold their hands up. Captain Cousins, just as a matter of interest, was recommended for the Victoria Cross. One of the sadder aspects of the Victoria Cross is it is one of only 2 awards that you can get if you're killed during the act. One is a mention in dispatches, and the other is the Victoria Cross. And sadly, it was deemed by those that do these, that make these decisions, that the Victoria Cross would not be awarded to him, and because of that, he doesn't get anything. So he's given nothing, and there are an awful lot of people that felt that he should have been awarded the Victoria Cross for his bravery during the day. That position is lost, and what I also add now, if we are following in their footsteps, which of course we are, so we've walked up this zigzag track, which you still can, you can still see the German pillboxes, and if you go beyond them and you realise how extensive this position was, we have Tobruks, which are mortar positions, we have German, and they're still visible, some concreted, some not, we have zigzagging trenches you can see going everywhere, and these are all, you can walk up and down them, you're on the top of the cliff, so you don't have to be careful, but there's a lot there. So if you are interested in those kind of relics of warfare and literally walking in their footsteps, then this is another of those places. It's a great place to go go and have a look.
Just extraordinary, Pete. I think it goes without saying that seeing those tangible items left over, trenches and pillbox and things, that's what makes a visit to the battlefield so amazing. That's why it's important to get out and walk the ground. And just extraordinary connections with the history.
It is, and there's nothing better. We've talked about it before, to stand there, and it's why a lot of people explore the battlefields, is because that tangible evidence of seeing something that's left. Here, there's been an effort to preserve it, so the actual things like the Tobruks, which are concreted, you can fall down the holes if you didn't know they were there. They've got metal grills on the top to stop you from falling down and hurting yourself. So what's nice, it means that the local community is ensuring that these things will survive, which I think is worthy. You'll know why, is because it generates quite a lot of, I've been there lots of times and it's always fairly busy. And yes, there are people coming, it's a beautiful little place, but there are an awful lot of people who come there to see the Normandy defences, to have a look at what went on during the Normandy landings in 1944. So it brings in an awful lot of revenue for the local people, which I think is great, because it is a very small little port. The fishing industry is nearly gone. In fact, there are still fishing boats operating from there. So for those that, even if you had a member of the family that's very keen on the military aspects, then you can still go to a place like this, because there's an awful lot to keep you occupied. It's a beautiful little place. I love going there. So back to the story, what's going on. So this has now been taken. The soldiers on the other side, the German soldiers on the other side, on the eastern side, can now see that this has been taken, and they start to also surrender. They realise that the game's up. There's no point in continuing if the commandos are now behind them, and of course they don't know how many men there are, what's been going on behind them, and so they start to surrender as well. So the commandos have got to get through this night. So they find houses to sleep in. And in fact, there's an awful lot has been written about this action over the years. And something I was literally reading tonight is that one of the billets that the men moved into was apparently the town brothel. And they discovered that there were an awful lot of beds in this building, which was ideal. And so they put sentries on the doors and had a good night's sleep in the comfy beds of the local brothel. I should just mention something. There's an extraordinary thing happened in the middle of this battle. A vehicle turned up. The commandos were running short of ammunition, and a couple of vehicles had made it all the way from the British landing beaches. And remember, we're now in this area in between the British and the American, and brought new ammunition and supplied the commandos with ammunition just exactly as they need it. So that was one of those things that happened that was very lucky. The other thing that was going on, and I haven't mentioned this, is that rocket firing Typhoons had whistled in as well, and had aided them. That was something that had been planned, and it worked perfectly well. So again, we're back to this planning. Gunfire from the ships at sea, aircraft attacking specific targets, both brought in by a man with a radio eventually, who managed to get there and organise it. So we've got lots of things happening at the same time. And so on the morning of the 8th, the Americans get there. Of course, they've had that absolutely, I'm sure it's going to be a podcast for the future, that appalling time on the beaches at Omaha. Interestingly, just something I should have said earlier, that the Germans defending Port-en-Bessin are the same units that were defending Omaha Beach. So these are not guys that were going to hold their hands up easily. These are hardened veterans who were holding the area around Port-en-Bessin. So the Americans arrived the following morning, and there's a very comical comment that's from one of the commandos. He shouted out, "Are you Americans?" And the American soldier shouted back, "No, hell, we're Texans." So they arrived, and that's the linking. That's the first linking of American troops and British troops during the Normandy landings. A little bit more about 4-7 Commando, just interesting from their history. At the end of the Second World War, they're disbanded, but they exist again now. They were 4-7 Commando, was reformed in the October of 2001 and then renamed in November of 2019, so not that long ago. And they're now known as 4-7 Commando Raiding Group Royal Marines. So they are a unit that exists today. Didn't in my time. I served in 4-2 Commando, and 4-7 Commando did not exist during that period. So it's nice to see that the name has been renewed. As far as memorials are concerned, there are memorials all over the town. You have to look carefully. On each of these ridges at each side, the eastern and the western, there is a memorial, and I think it's a well-placed memorial to Captain Cousins, who was killed on that assault. And then on the other ridge, the other cliff, there's a memorial to 4-7 Commando. We also have a general memorial in the centre of the town by the quay, the docks. And then, of course, there's one of the very common, that's not a good term, right the way along the landing beaches we have these memorials that are just about the landings basically, and there's one of those, it's the if I remember rightly, it's like the Cross of Lorraine, and that is on the harbour entrance, commemorating the overall landings. And then the final memorial commemorating the Pluto pipeline. Now, I didn't mention what that was called, I don't think I did anyway. That Pluto, that pipeline bringing the petrol in, I have to say, it wasn't until a few years ago that I realised that it actually meant something. I thought it was just a name, a code name, but it doesn't. It means a pipeline under the ocean. I had to think about it then. Pipeline under the ocean is what Pluto stands for, and that's where the petrol was pumped in.
Well, Pete, what a remarkable story, a remarkable little town. It's what I love so much about Normandy is that everyone that goes, I mean, a huge percentage of people that go to Normandy do it as a day trip from Paris and will just visit Omaha Beach and the American Cemetery. The people that are a bit more dedicated will spend several days there and see all these sites. But I think that the walk we've done today demonstrates you could spend weeks in Normandy and not see all of the features. I just love the idea of going to these less well-known places where just these incredibly heroic actions have occurred. It's something that we're starting to do, I think, really well here on this podcast, Pete, is we're discovering these extra little stories. We're walking the Somme and talking about little towns that most people don't know. We're visiting little corners of the Ypres salient. We're going to go to some obscure battlefields around the world in upcoming editions of the podcast. But this one, on D-Day, we're finding these little bits of the history that most people who go on a bus tour or organised tour just aren't going to see.
I think it's necessary because you'll know and I know that when we're guiding on tour groups, we just don't have the time to do these. You really need to, if you can, to get back or to book a very specific tour to cover these little nuances. I mean, very often I get a day to do the whole of the Normandy landings. I just whistle down the coastline saying that's that. We normally have lunch because it's my favourite spot here at Port-en-Bessin, and then we carry on again. And so it's great to be able to spend that time to actually walk these sites. I have to say, the final comment, if you're going to walk this, then you really need to see where the men that died here are buried. And all the Marines that died, and in fact all of the British soldiers that died, Commonwealth soldiers, there are obviously the Canadians, but they're all, the bulk of them are buried in Bayeux. In the cemetery there. And so all of the Marines that died here are at Bayeux, where the tapestry is, the famous Bayeux tapestry. So another reason to go there. You can go and have a look at the tapestry as well as visiting the men that died in the landings.
It's a beautiful cemetery, one of my favourites, and quite remarkably different to the American cemetery. When you go to the American cemetery is incredible in its own right, but I do love the understated nature of the British cemetery, where everyone's just buried. They've got comments from the family. It feels a lot more, a bit more of a celebration of the individual than the grandeur of the American cemetery. Bayeux Cemetery is a really lovely place, and so absolutely, if you go and do this walk, make sure you go there and pay your respects, not just to the men from 4-7 Commando, but all the British and Commonwealth men who were killed during D-Day. And we should say the contribution of the Brits and the Commonwealth forces is sometimes a little bit overshadowed by the American involvement in D-Day. So a wonderful walk just to remember the British and Commonwealth soldiers, and definitely go to that cemetery as well.
Well, we'll be back to cover other areas, and one of the things I want to go to myself, so I need to go for a walk myself, is the new memorial that's being created to commemorate British effort on the beaches. Oddly, there was no British memorial on the landing beaches, and one it's not finished yet, but it's been built, and it's going to list all of those that were killed during the landings.
Well, Pete, it's just been a fascinating walk. Thank you again. Just as I said, one of these ones, I won't use the term obscure, but just less well known, just exploring chapters of history that people might not be aware of. I should say a couple of things at this point. On my YouTube channel, on Living History TV on YouTube, I did a video a couple of years ago now about how to visit the Normandy beaches. So go and check that one out, because it's a good overview of how you get to Normandy, where you can stay, and how you can get around and see these sites. But also, when we're allowed to travel again, when we're allowed to head back to France, through Matt McLachlan Battlefield Tours, we have an extensive portfolio of Normandy tours. Short little ones you can do from Paris and more extensive ones you can do. Pete Smith himself leads some of them, so if you do want to get over there when we are allowed to travel again, there is a whole range of great tours that you can find through our website, which is battlefields.com.au. Normandy is a wonderful place. I can't wait to get back over there myself. Pete, I can't wait to catch up for a beer, to walk the ground with you and see these sites firsthand. It's just been remarkable, mate. So thank you so much for your compassion and your insights into these remarkable places.
It's a pleasure, Matt. Look forward to taking you there and having a wander among the slit trenches.